But first, we want to start on the West Coast, where, in her first official act, newly sworn-in Mayor Karen Bass declared a state of emergency on homelessness in Los Angeles. This comes as the state has been trying to combat the issue with over 69,000 homeless people in Los Angeles County this year alone. And Mayor Bass joins us now. First of all, may I congratulate you just on being the first on a number of levels as mayor of Los Angeles. It's not the first time in your career you've been a first, but it's wonderful, very know your value moment. We've been watching the homelessness crisis unfold across the country. New York City is trying some unconventional, controversial ways of dealing with homelessness and actually taking those who are deemed mentally ill to a hospital and holding them until a care plan is prepared. I mean, these are hard to execute ideas and policies. I'm wondering, as you declare a state of emergency, how you think you will be able to get as many people off the street as possible in a short amount of time as possible.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you.
You know, this has been a problem in Los Angeles for a while, and it has exploded to the point of the numbers that you talked about. And we know that every day, 5 people don't wake up off these streets. So what the emergency order will do is it will allow me to expedite the building process. It will allow me to take over certain property, and it will allow me to be able to get building done quickly. That is one of our problems. However, in the meantime, there are still people on the streets. So while we are fast-tracking building, we are going to launch a program in 2 days called Inside Safe, and it's basically built upon the lessons learned from the pandemic. I mean, we have thousands of hotel rooms and motel rooms in Los Angeles, and when the motels were vacant, the city and the county did master leasing, took over entire motels, and that's what we need to do to get people off of the tents in the streets. And just think about it. In America, you have hundreds of thousands of people around the country who pitch tents everywhere and have started living on the streets. This is not acceptable.
Mayor Bass, good morning and congratulations to you. What about the mental health piece of this? This is so much of what Mayor Adams is trying to get at here in New York City. Obviously, mental illness surrounds so many of the cases of homelessness in this country. How do you address the root of the problem? It's great to get people shelter. That's the first step and a critical one. But what about next? What's the next step?
Well, first of all, it is important to know that the population that are unhoused are diverse. So, for example, there's thousands of children who are on the streets, with women who have fled domestic violence. There's former foster youth that are on the street. There's people in Los Angeles who work full-time jobs who go home to tents because they can't afford the rent. But when it comes to mental illness, and I know we have all seen this on streets where people who are profoundly mentally ill, who clearly cannot take care of themselves, and someone needs to take care of them. So in California, we passed legislation called Care Court, which is similar to what Mayor Adams is doing. And I happen to believe very strongly that it is absolutely humane to allow somebody to die on the street when they are profoundly mentally ill. You can tell you can't take care of them. But here's my problem. I do believe it's important to hospitalize people when they're in a crisis, but where are they going to go after that? Which then raises the issue of building facilities. Now, we already do this. The facilities that we keep people in now who are profoundly mentally ill are jails. And that, I believe, in and of itself is inhumane.
Yeah, and Mayor Bass, congratulations, of course. Thank you. It seems to me that when you look at the homeless crisis, when you look at, like you said, so many homeless Americans pitching tents and starting to live there in unsafe, unsanitary circumstances, this seems to be an issue that lends itself to public-private partnerships. You know, we've seen in New York City. I know you've seen it out in LA too, but in New York City, we saw a lot of finance leaders step forward and help with schools in Harlem and in other areas. Made a real difference. I'm wondering what sort of public private partnerships are possible in Los Angeles to help homeless people get off the streets, get help, and get shelter?
Well, that is the only way it can be done, Joe. And it is an extensive public-private partnership that's at work here. So, for example, I mentioned the motel owners who are making their entire properties available. We have independent nonprofit organizations that actually know how to get people off the streets and into housing. They work with outreach workers who are formerly unhoused. We have a lot of good organizations in Los Angeles, but the fundamental problem is that they don't have the resources or the capacity to address the problem at the scale in which is needed. And so that's part of what we have to do here.
Mayor Bass, Al Sharpton, again, congratulations. And certainly you know all of our people are ecstatic that you're there. And thank you for going with Reverend K.W. Toulis and the ministers as one of your first appearances as mayor on yesterday. I know you for 20, 25 years, and you're real at heart a civil rights activist. So the tension of how you deal with homelessness and deal with protecting their civil rights, but at the same time removing them, it becomes something that you've got to thread the needle. Eric Adams here is dealing with it. Lori Lightfoot is dealing with it in Chicago. You're dealing with it in L.A. How do you deal with the balance of removing them, but not having police being able to overreach or having people feel there's an overreach, but at the same time not leave people out there to suffer, and in many cases having mental health issues where they don't even know they're suffering? How do you strike that balance?
Right. And once again, I'll raise the fact that the population of unhoused is very, very diverse. And so if you are talking about people who are profoundly mentally ill, that is a situation, because they might not know they need help. They might not know they don't have clothes on. They might not know they're in the middle of the street. And you absolutely cannot let somebody hurt themselves if it's obvious that that is what is going to happen. But what happens in the majority of cases is you have outreach workers who talk to people, who show them what their options are. And in Los Angeles, like I imagine a lot of other places, people literally choose to be in a tent rather than in a shelter because they know that the shelters are not safe. So this has required us to have new type of thinking for how you get people off the streets, which is why motels and hotels is an option. I worked in healthcare for a long time. I worked in the emergency room. I worked in the psychiatric emergency room. And I saw people who were brought into the emergency room. They were medicated, they were treated, and then they went to a facility that was not a locked facility, but a lot of these organizations, community groups, drug treatment programs don't exist right now. The cutbacks have been so severe that if you want residential drug treatment because you've been addicted on the street for several years, you get 30 days. Nobody gets clean and sober in 30 days. And then we'll send you away from the drug program and send you back to your tent. So there needs to be some profound rethinking about a social safety net. And unless we do that, there are going to continue to be people on our streets. And frankly, the problem that is huge in Los Angeles is, I know, getting larger and larger in cities across America. This is not America. This is not acceptable anywhere.
Mayor Bass, good morning. Jonathan Lemire. On another topic, COVID cases going up across the country, and there's been a real spike there in Los Angeles City and county, to the point where there has been some debate about restoring an indoor mask mandate. Can you give us a sense of where things stand battling the virus in Los Angeles, and is a mask mandate, other measures, what's on the table?
Right. I'm not sure that a mask mandate is going to come back. The numbers over the last couple of weeks have been going up, but there were good reports today and yesterday. So it might be stabilizing. And then, of course, like other cities, we're also dealing with the flu and RSV. So we do have the triple effect here. It's being discussed. Decisions haven't been made. And by the way, that impacts the unhoused population as well, and why we can no longer have congregate shelters with lots and lots of cots and people in one room, because I think we are going to be in a pandemic type world for some time to come.
Oof. Yeah, that makes it even more complicated. This is a problem that we're seeing in in major cities across the country.
Right, no doubt about it. And Mayor Bass, one other thing too, another issue where I think sometimes people get their wires crossed on what they think is humanitarian, that it's somehow humane to allow people to live in tents on the streets. Another one has to do with migrants at the border, that somehow it's humane for us to just sort of have a laissez-faire approach to migrants at the border because we were so repelled, obviously, by what Donald Trump did. That's obviously not the case. The humanitarian crisis grows by the day.
Yes, it does.
What's the answer? I mean, what does the Biden administration need to start doing to lessen the humanitarian crisis at the border?
Well, I mean, clearly we need comprehensive immigration reform, and it was something that I certainly worked on in Congress, and that absolutely causes the delay. But we really have to have the resources to make sure that people connect with their families, because a lot, I don't know if it's the majority or not, but people who come across the border are trying to connect with families, and we need to expedite that while they go through the immigration process.
Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass, thank you very much. Congratulations. And it's really great to have you on the show this morning.
Thank you so much.
We appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.